Your body doesn't need a wall clock to tell time. Every cell, every organ has its own clock, and if you choose to ignore it, your body will keep sending you bills. That's a passage from the Circadian Rhythm Code. When I read that line, I had to stop. For so many years, we've been accustomed to thinking that clocks only exist out there, running on batteries on a wall or flashing on a phone screen. Few of us realize that within each of our cells, a far more precise mechanism is constantly at work, quietly dictating when we are alert, when we are hungry, when we should sleep, and even when illness will emerge. This book isn't about a new trendy diet, nor is it a list of health tips. It's a journey to discover the truth. Our health, intelligence, and longevity depend on how we treat time. Imagine the same meal, the same number of calories, but if you eat it during the day, your body turns it into energy. If you eat it in the middle of the night, it accumulates as fat and damages your blood sugar. The same goes for sleep. If you sleep at the right time, your brain gets cleaned up, memories are consolidated. But if you pull an all-nighter, your brain becomes chaotic and your immune system collapses. What astonished me was the simplicity of the solution. We don't need more medicine. We don't need to buy miraculous products. We just need to return to the rhythm that nature has inscribed into our very genes. Eat during daylight hours, sleep when darkness falls, get early morning light exposure, and exercise when the body is most ready. Every study, from tiny fruit flies to cancer patients, leads to one conclusion: time itself is the fundamental medicine. But the big question is, if we know this, why do we still live out of sync? Why do children have to go to school before the sun rises? Why do adults sit in dimly lit offices all day, only to immerse themselves in blue screens all night? Why do we believe that freedom means eating whenever we want, working whenever we want, when the price we pay is premature illness? I write these lines not to preach a moral lesson, but to hold up a mirror for you. Take a look at yourself. Is your body living in sync? Those bouts of fatigue, those sleepless nights, those late meals, are they all warning signs? So I want to ask you, are you ready to try listening to the clock within you? The clock that never stops, yet has never truly been acknowledged by you. We often think that only those pulling all-nighters in hospitals, on construction sites, or in airplane cockpits are trapped by night shifts. But the truth is far harsher. If you've ever studied through the night for an exam, stayed late at the office for a project, woken up with a crying child, or flown across time zones and tried to work immediately upon landing, then you too have entered the world of those living out of sync. I call it the shared human condition. All of us, more or less, have become night shift workers. I've witnessed fresh young faces, seemingly at the peak of vitality, yet after just a few months of late nights and compensatory sleep, their eyes grew dull. In surveys, up to 87% of adults admit that their sleep schedule shifts by at least 2 hours between weekdays and weekends. What we call social jet lag doesn't require an airplane. It just needs the habit of sleeping late on Saturday nights and feeling groggy on Monday mornings. Among the hundreds of university students I've monitored, only 2 maintained a consistent sleep schedule every day. The rest lived as if their body clock was just a joke that could be arbitrarily bent. But the body doesn't find it funny. Each time we push ourselves to stay awake longer, our brains lose their way, decisions become hazy, and memories crumble piece by piece. Sometimes, just one night out of sync is enough to alter our eating habits. The cravings for sweets, high-calorie snacks, thick coffee, or energy drinks replacing real meals are even more frightening. Patchwork solutions like alcohol or sleeping pills open a new vicious cycle, turning temporary fixes into fixed habits. Desynchronization is never confined to a single individual. It spreads silently but persistently. A mother staying up late to care for her child pulls the entire family into the chaos of interrupted sleep. A father working night shifts causes his children to grow up in a state of semi-awareness. It's no surprise that these children are more prone to obesity, delayed cognitive development, or behavioral instability than their peers. We often think of children as mirrors reflecting their parents' emotions, but few are willing to admit that they also reflect their parents' circadian rhythms. I remember a time when my wife had just given birth. Each week felt like a battle against time itself. By Friday, she would practically collapse, her body exhausted, her immune system plummeting. It would take the entire weekend to recover even slightly. The cost of fighting the biological clock isn't just fleeting fatigue, it's a silent erosion from within. We often rationalize a late party, a long flight, a night of studying, it's nothing. But each of those small pieces accumulates, and then our natural defense system begins to crumble. Viruses that once only gave us a sniffle can now knock us down. A healthy stomach starts reacting strangely. Heart rate, blood pressure, blood sugar fluctuate like a pendulum losing its axis. Studies have found that communities working night shifts have significantly higher rates of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and even cancer. The World Health Organization once classified night shift work as a probable carcinogen. This might seem illogical, but it precisely reflects the disruption of the circadian rhythm. So what does this mean? It means we can't trick ourselves into thinking just a little bit won't hurt. The body doesn't count time like a wall calendar. It counts with the precision of every cell, every gene, every rhythm. When we live out of sync, the entire system is pushed into an alarm state. I still remember vividly. My father's death was caused by a truck driver who had been sleep-deprived for hours. A man who should have stopped to rest, but pushed on, and in a single moment, his vehicle became a weapon. Science today proves that a sleep-deprived brain is as dangerous as an intoxicated brain. Yet, the law has never penalized anyone for driving while sleep-deprived. Looking back, I realize no one escapes this vortex. Even those who believe they live healthily and exercise regularly are drawn into this game of desynchronization by phones, screens, and artificial light. Modern society has trained an entire generation of night shift workers without name tags, without time clocks, and, ironically, in our race to exploit every minute of the day, we lose the most precious thing, the primal rhythm that life has bestowed upon us: prolonged desynchronization. The price isn't just a tired morning, it transforms into diseases that erode us daily. The stomach loses its ability to regulate digestive secretions, leading to reflux, ulcers, or irritable bowel syndrome becoming unwelcome companions. The heart has to beat out of rhythm. Blood vessels stiffen, blood pressure skyrockets, blood sugar fluctuates abnormally, paving the way for diabetes to creep in and fat to accumulate in the liver and around the heart, forming the pathological siege that medicine calls metabolic syndrome. This explains why night shift workers have shorter lifespans and why statistics for obesity, heart disease, and cancer in this group are consistently much higher than for those living in sync. It's hard to believe, but prolonged sleepless nights can sow the seeds of cancer. The World Health Organization once classified working against the day-night rhythm as a probable carcinogen. A body out of sync is like a city without power. The gene surveillance system gets damaged, cell repair mechanisms halt, and tiny accumulated errors silently transform into tumors. If it's reached this point, the question is no longer whether it's dangerous, but how far we've gone in fighting against ourselves. To answer that, we must look back at the evolutionary history of life. Humans are not the only species with an internal rhythm. Hundreds of years ago, scientists observed that a tree confined in a dark cellar still raised its leaves during the day and lowered them at night. That wasn't a reaction to light, but the operation of an internal clock. From insects and birds to rodents, all carry an endogenous rhythm to know when to bloom, when to migrate, when to sleep or hunt. Humans are no exception. A 20th century experiment revealed this secret. A volunteer took food, candles, and books and descended into a deep cave in the Andes, completely isolated from sunlight and social noise. Whenever he felt sleepy, he called a supervisor outside to record the time, then went to sleep. When he woke up, he called again, day after day. The data revealed a strange phenomenon. Even without external time cues, his body adhered to a stable cycle, but slightly longer than 24 hours, around 24:15. This means that a clock always exists within us, independent of the sun or moon. Given the chance, it will operate on its own. That clock was once the secret to our ancestors' survival. Imagine primitive humans living in tropical regions where day and night are sharply divided. They had to wake before sunrise to ambush prey at watering holes. They needed peak muscular strength in the afternoon to run back to their shelters. And as dusk fell, they had to eat their last meal early and find safety before nightfall. That's how our genes were programmed, to eat, work, move, and rest according to the natural light cycle. Gradually, humans learned to bend this rhythm. The first fire was a turning point. Fire brought dim light, enough to push back darkness for a few more hours. enough to tell stories by the hearth, to prepare food, and to guard against wild animals. But fire also instilled in us the habit of living out of sync. From fire to oil lamps, then electrification, and finally LED screens. The history of humanity is a history of endless negotiations with the night. That negotiation has come at a bloody price. Many communities in the far north and south, where winters last with 1,600 hours of darkness, show significantly higher rates of depression and suicide. Their bodies are out of sync. Their brains can no longer distinguish day from night. It's as if the entire community is trapped in an endless shift. And in modern society, we are recreating that very circumstance within our cities. Blue light penetrates the night, natural darkness disappears, sleep is pushed back, meals are prolonged, and the entire biological clock is forced to run on a jumble of artificial signals. Have we become too smart, pushing ourselves into a dead end? When technology allows us to eat anything at any time, chat with someone on the other side of the earth at midnight, and consume news and entertainment 24/7, that very freedom becomes shackles binding the rhythm that has existed in our genes for millions of years. And so, to live healthily, the first step isn't to find more medicine or a new diet, but to turn and look squarely at the clock screaming within every cell. When we start examining how the internal clock works, the picture that emerges is both simple and unbelievably intricate. Imagine a tiny machine within each cell, creating a rhythmic on-off cycle every day. That machine is the system of genes and proteins that control time. In 1971, in a lab with tiny fruit flies, two scientists accidentally opened the door to this world. They discovered a gene that, when altered, caused flies to sleep too early, too late, or without any order at all. That gene was named PER, short for period. After many years, scientists understood that the PER gene is a central link in life's timekeeping machinery. Its operation can be visualized like an ice maker in a refrigerator. It drips ice cubes into a tray, day after day. When the tray is full, the machine stops. When we take ice out, it resumes. It's similar in the body. PER produces protein, and the protein accumulates to a certain level, then stops. Then the protein degrades, and the cycle begins anew. This process lasts about 24 hours. A perfect clock inside the cell, but the story doesn't end with one gene. In mammals, dozens of genes collaborate, creating an orchestra of time. And if one musician plays out of sync, if a gene is mutated, the entire body's symphony becomes distorted. Some people are born always feeling sleepy at 7:00 p.m., while others stay awake until 3:00 a.m. Not because of willpower, but because their genetic symphony is off-key. Another startling discovery came from a seemingly clumsy experiment. A research student attached fluorescent tags to the PER gene of fruit flies so that when this gene was active, the fly's body would faintly glow according to the day-night rhythm. While cleaning up, he dissected the flies, separating each body part. When he returned after a holiday, he realized that even the detached leg, wing, or antenna continued to glow with a 24-hour rhythm. This proved that not only the brain, but every organ, every tissue, has its own clock. Imagine the body as a house with many rooms. The living room has its own clock, the bedroom has its own, the kitchen has its own. The liver knows when to secrete bile, the pancreas knows when to release insulin, muscles know when they're ready to contract, intestines know when to absorb and excrete. If all these clocks are synchronized, the house runs smoothly, but if some run slow and others run fast, chaos will ensue. Light is the conductor. In the human retina, there's a special type of cell containing the protein melanopsin. It doesn't help us see images, but rather sends signals to the brain to indicate whether it's light or dark. This signal adjusts the central clock in the brain, which then transmits rhythms to the smaller clocks throughout the body. The problem is that melanopsin is particularly sensitive to blue light. This light emanates from the midday sun, but also floods our phone screens, computer monitors, and LED lights. When you're in bed at midnight, scrolling through your phone, your eyes are receiving the message that it's bright noon. The central clock immediately pushes back sleep. Melatonin, the sleep-inducing hormone, is suppressed, causing your heart to beat faster and blood pressure to rise slightly. Meanwhile, the next morning, you're in an office lacking natural light. Melanopsin isn't sufficiently activated to confirm to your brain that it's daytime. The result is a skewed cycle. You feel sluggish when you need to be alert and wide awake when you need to sleep. My colleagues and I once used mice to demonstrate a paradox. Not only light, but also the timing of meals has the power to set the clock. Mice are naturally nocturnal eaters, but when we fed them during the daytime, contrary to their natural habits, all the genes in their liver changed their rhythm, as if light no longer held power, and the meal itself became the alarm clock. Simply by adjusting the eating window, the internal clocks within their organs shifted. This discovery led to a breakthrough. It's not just what we eat or how much we eat that's important, but when we eat that is key. Thousands of subsequent studies, including those on humans, have reinforced this conclusion, opening a door. We can prevent obesity, diabetes, and heart disease not just by controlling portions, but by limiting the time window for eating each day. Life evolved over millions of years to survive in a world of light and darkness, hunger and satiety, work and rest. And now, as we break those boundaries with technology, our health demands that we return to respecting that rhythm. The experiments on mice were just the beginning. We proceeded to try a more rigorous scenario, feeding mice a diet high in sugar and fat foods known to quickly cause obesity and diabetes in them. As expected, the group of mice allowed to eat freely day and night became obese within weeks. Their blood sugar was dysregulated, livers fatty, and hearts damaged. But another group, despite consuming the same calories and the same types of food, was only permitted to eat within an 8 to 12-hour window. They maintained a healthy weight, stable blood sugar, and almost entirely avoided metabolic disorders. The paradox here: no change in food, only a change in the clock hands. What was even more surprising was that when this method was applied to already severely ill mice, simply by limiting their eating window, their bodies began to recover. Blood sugar decreased, accumulated fat receded, no medication, no special diet, just a change in timing. The message was crystal clear. The biological clock doesn't just prevent disease, it also has the ability to reverse damage if we give it the chance. Gradually, evidence emerged from many different laboratories, not just in animals, but also in humans. Major health organizations began to take notice. The American Heart Association, after nearly 70 years, for the first time issued recommendations regarding meal timing, acknowledging that when we eat is just as important as what we eat. The science of circadian rhythms has stepped out of the laboratory and into the light, becoming one of the new directions in preventive medicine. However, theory remains meaningless if each person does not reflect on themselves. To understand how far off sync your internal clock is, the first step is observation. I often ask study participants to record a week of their activities: when they wake up, when they go to sleep. What time do meals occur? Is there physical activity? When do they get natural light exposure? After just a few days, the glaring discrepancies become clear. Some realize they eat their main meal right before bed. Others find themselves spending all day in the weak artificial light of an office, only to be bombarded by blue screens continuously from evening until late night. Some discover their bodies constantly feel tired in the afternoon because they scroll on their phones until 1:00 a.m. every night. No sophisticated equipment is needed. Just a small notebook or a journaling app is enough to see how your biological clock is being bent. I also designed a simple questionnaire for individuals to self-score their sleep quality, alertness, eating habits, and energy levels throughout the day. These answers aren't to label you as healthy or sick, but to pinpoint where your rhythm is fractured. Sometimes, just changing one factor, going to bed an hour earlier, limiting dinner before 8 p.m., or taking a walk outdoors every morning is enough to bring the entire system back into rhythm. The most important part of this process isn't about giving commands like, "you must do this or that," but about helping people reconnect with their bodies. Each time we note our eating and sleeping times, we begin to hear signals that were previously drowned out by the noise of society. A gentle wave of sleepiness at 10:00 p.m., a truly hungry feeling in the morning. Those aren't coincidences, they are calls from the internal clock. All I want to emphasize after this journey is that the biological clock is not some distant theory, not a laboratory invention. It has been in every cell, from the moment we were a fetus until our last breath. And if we choose to live out of sync, we will pay the price. But if we choose to listen, adjusting each small habit, we will regain the health, intelligence, and clarity we thought we had lost. So the foundation is clear. We are all out of sync, how the biological clock operates and how to begin self-monitoring, self-identifying. From here, the path leads us to bigger questions. How to sleep deeper, how to eat within the right window to lose weight, how to work and study when the brain is clearest, how to exercise when muscles are most ready, and no less importantly, how to fight the silent enemy called artificial light. There are mornings when you open your eyes, but instead of feeling revitalized, you feel as though you've been dragged from an invisible battle. Sleep has passed, yet your body hasn't regained any strength. This is a common experience for many, and it's not due to fate, but to how we've disrupted our own biological clocks. Sleep is not a switch that can be flipped on and off at whim. It's a complex cycle guided by light and darkness, by regular schedules, by the harmony of thousands of signals in the brain and body. When you force yourself to stay up late, when you sleep in until noon to catch up, you are sending contradictory signals. The brain can no longer distinguish day from night, and sleep, even if prolonged, ceases to be a restorative therapy. I've met many people who believe that simply catching up on sleep over the weekend is enough, but the harsh truth is, adding a few hours of sleep on Saturday and Sunday cannot compensate for 5 days of disrupted rhythm. On the contrary, oversleeping can make the body feel like it's jet-lagged all over again. On Monday morning, when the alarm rings, you feel as if you've just stepped off a transcontinental flight. Thus, the more you try to catch up on sleep, the harder the new week becomes. The only way to regain truly quality sleep isn't by increasing duration, but by restoring regularity. The brain needs a fixed wake-up time every single day. The body needs strong light exposure the moment you open your eyes. Pull back the curtains, stand by a window, or step outside. Just a few minutes of morning natural light exposure can restart the entire system, signaling that a new day has begun. I've tested this with insomniacs, simply by having them take a brisk 10-minute walk outdoors every morning. Their nighttime sleep quality significantly improved. They slept deeper, were more alert the next morning, something sleeping pills or coffee couldn't achieve. Sunlight did it simply and precisely. Imagine sleep as a musical piece, with light as the conductor. When the conductor doesn't appear on time, the orchestra falls out of tune. When natural light is replaced by phone screens or artificial lights, the brain misinterprets the signals, thinking it's still daytime. As a result, melatonin, the sleep-inducing hormone, is blocked. The body remains artificially alert until late at night, and a vicious cycle begins. Difficulty falling asleep, late sleep, grogginess the next morning, and even more difficulty sleeping the next night. Young people often don't realize the immediate danger. But when this process is prolonged, memory erodes, clarity diminishes, and the spirit easily falls into gloom. Many studies have proven that sleep deprivation not only makes you less sharp at work, but also collapses the immune system, making the body susceptible to colds, infections, and even increasing the risk of chronic diseases. The greatest paradox is that in an age of abundant conveniences, what we lack is precisely natural darkness and true sleep. We build brightly lit homes, offices that operate through the night, and devices that emit light nonstop. But we forget that the body only truly recovers when allowed to descend into the deep darkness where its primal rhythms operate. Someone once told me they were afraid of the dark, but I think that fear itself is a product of modern society. Darkness is not frightening. It is our oldest companion, helping our ancestors recover to survive another day. When we reject darkness, we are rejecting an opportunity for healing. Simple yet powerful suggestions can begin immediately. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Get exposure to natural light in the morning. Turn off bright lights and screens at least an hour before sleep. No need for luxurious solutions, just restore respect for darkness and light. Sleep will naturally regain its inherent power. Sleep isn't a timeout from life for rest. It is the very foundation of alertness, intelligence, and longevity. If we disregard it, we will lose everything. If we preserve it, everything else can endure for decades. We propose hundreds of nutritional theories. Eat more vegetables, less meat, cut out sugar, add fiber, count every calorie. But amidst these noisy debates, a fundamental factor is overlooked. It's not just what to eat or how much to eat, but when to eat. I still remember the first time I saw the results of an experiment on two groups of genetically identical mice. Both groups were on a high-sugar, high-fat diet with the same calorie intake, but with one difference. One group was allowed to eat whenever they wanted, day or night, while the other was restricted to an 8-hour eating window. After a few weeks, the contrast was stark. The free-eating group became obese, their blood sugar skyrocketed, fat accumulated in their livers, showing clear signs of diabetes and heart disease. The time-restricted eating group, however, remained lean, had stable metabolic indicators, and healthy livers, no medication, no supplements. Just a change in eating time. I remember being stunned by this paradox because it overturned what we usually think. The habit of continuous, all-day snacking is the silent enemy, not just the type of food. The body needs periods of rest, metabolic, darkness, for repair and cleanup. When we cram food in for 15-16 hours a day, the body has no time to rest, and chaos begins. This explains why modern societies where supermarkets are open 24/7, refrigerators are always full, and desks always have snacks are facing waves of obesity and chronic diseases. It's not because we eat too much at once, but because we eat for too long, without interruption. Subsequent studies showed that even with eating windows extending to 9-12 hours, benefits still exist. But when the eating time reaches 15 hours or more, the body perceives it as continuous feeding, and all health risks emerge. This means that simply by shortening the eating window to 10 hours, we can reverse a large portion of the damage. In practice, I work with many people who believe they eat little. They skip breakfast, have a light lunch, then a large dinner, followed by snacks, a glass of wine, or late-night fruit. Their total calorie intake isn't necessarily high, but their eating window extends for 14-16 hours. The result is weight gain, blood sugar dysregulation, and fatty liver. Only when they tried limiting their eating to a 10-hour window did their bodies start to change. They slept better, weight gradually decreased, and blood tests improved. The interesting thing is that even when applied to severely ill individuals, benefits still appeared. Type 2, diabetic and obese patients who tried eating within an 8-10-hour window reduced their medication, improved blood sugar, and reduced liver fat in just a few months. Their bodies seemed to be reminded of their inherent rhythm and responded immediately. In essence, this isn't new. Our ancestors didn't have refrigerators accessible at any time. They ate when the sun was high and finished when it was dark. A 12-hour daylight window was the natural limit, and the biological clock evolved to adapt to that. What's new is that we are gradually forgetting this rule. And science now has to remind us of the paradox here. While the food industry races to create more low-fat, low-sugar, superfood products, the fundamental solution doesn't lie in the food itself, but in the time window. Science calls it time-restricted eating, but in reality, it's just our way of returning to living closer to nature. Try to imagine a day where you have a late breakfast at 9:00 a.m., lunch at 1:00 p.m., and dinner before 7:00 p.m. The eating window is confined to 10 hours. For the rest of the time, the body rests, cells have time to repair, the liver has time to break down fat, and the brain cleans up waste. No other harsh regimen can provide such clear effectiveness. I don't deny that food quality is important, but if we only look at the food and forget the timing, we only understand half the story. The biological clock in every cell doesn't just listen to what goes in, but also when, and if we send the right signals at the right time, the body will respond with health. If you've ever sat in an early morning class, eyelids heavy, mind blank as if not fully awake, then you've experienced the impact of a societal decision that goes against the biological clock. Many schools set class times so early that children are deprived of morning light, the most crucial signal to kickstart the brain. Morning light not only makes us alert, it synchronizes the entire nervous system, signaling to the body that the day has begun. When children are pushed into classrooms before the sun is up, their brains are still lost in biological darkness. Lessons fall into a void, and memories float aimlessly. But the paradox doesn't stop there. After school, many children rush into evening extracurricular activities under extremely bright lights, from football fields to sports gyms. These very artificial lights inhibit melatonin and suppress sleepiness, pushing back the brain's clock. As a result, children can't sleep early, they stay up late frequently, are more tired the next morning, and their academic performance suffers. I observed such students for weeks. Their sleep patterns were like a distorted piece of music: too little light during the day, too much at night, and their circadian rhythm lost its bearings. The price paid is declining academic performance, erratic moods, and even an increased risk of anxiety and depression. If we shift to the workplace, the story is no different. I've walked through cramped offices with dim artificial light and sealed windows. There, employees work as if trapped in an endless, gloomy afternoon. Many studies have shown that a lack of daylight makes people sluggish, irritable, and reduces productivity. Conversely, offices flooded with natural light foster more physical activity, brighter moods, and deeper nighttime sleep. This has led to a new trend: circadian-friendly lighting design. Instead of just installing enough lights, architects are now calculating intensity, color temperature, and timing of illumination to mimic the sun. In the early morning, soft light; midday, strong and white light; in the evening, warm and gradually diminishing light. Some cities have even incorporated health-based lighting standards into building codes. Once, I visited an experimental school in Europe. The classrooms were designed with large glass windows. The lights in the room automatically changed throughout the day. Students were allowed out into the yard during recess, under the sunlight. The results were remarkably different. They were more focused, dozed off less, and their scores improved simply by giving children what nature had already bestowed: light at the right time. We have opened a new path for education. Placing this in a broader perspective, I realize a sad truth. While we discuss educational technology, artificial intelligence, and online learning, a fundamental factor like light is still neglected. Human intelligence cannot shine if the brain is bound by a disrupted circadian rhythm. The same applies to adult work. Many companies invest in management software and prolonged meetings, but overlook designing living spaces that align with the biological clock. An employee working in a naturally lit office can be far more creative and resilient than someone who spends all day under cold neon lights. The question is not whether we have enough technology to improve performance, but whether we have enough courage to return to the basics. Synchronizing work hours with circadian rhythms, allowing the body to be exposed to sunlight, respecting rest at the right time. Deep down, we are no different from other creatures on this planet. Intelligence, creativity, productivity all flourish when we live in the rhythm of the sun and darkness. When we forget that, all other progress is merely a flashy facade covering gradual depletion. There's a simple paradox. The body is born to move, yet modern society trains us to sit still. A lack of movement doesn't just lead to muscle atrophy or fat accumulation, it also erodes the circadian rhythm. Studies on animals show that when mice are given a running wheel, their sleep becomes deeper, more regular, and their circadian rhythm seems to be reinforced. The clocks in their brains and other organs tick more clearly. This isn't only true for mice. In adolescence, regular physical activity helps them fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, stabilize their mood, and increases their concentration in class. For older adults, simply maintaining moderate activity, brisk walking, stretching, gardening is enough to improve sleep quality, reduce reliance on sleeping pills, and lessen sudden daytime sleepiness. The important thing is that exercise doesn't need to be high-performance sports, nor does it require going to the gym or running marathons. Every mundane movement, sweeping the house, carrying groceries, climbing stairs, gardening, sends signals to the body that the day is progressing, that energy needs to be expended, and that the circadian rhythm needs to be reinforced. I once met a woman in her 60s who complained that her sleep had been disrupted for years. She had tried many medications and therapies with little success. It was only when she started a simple routine, a 30-minute walk around her neighborhood every morning, that her sleep noticeably improved. Her body seemed to find its lost compass. There's no secret here, just the harmonious alignment of movement and natural light. But parallel to physical activity, there's a silent enemy we rarely take seriously enough: artificial light, especially from screens. Science has shown that our retinas contain special cells highly sensitive to blue light. They don't help us see images, but rather send signals to the brain to determine the time of day. When we hold a phone at midnight, the brain receives the signal that it's midday, melatonin production is blocked, the circadian rhythm is pushed back, and sleep is disrupted. I call blue light and screens nighttime disruptors because they don't just cause one sleepless night but create a chain of desynchronized days. The more artificial light at night, the harder it is for the body to start producing melatonin on time. The less natural light during the day, the more the body loses its synchronizing signals. We live in a reversed loop, sluggish during the day, wide awake at night. Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable. Kids who spend hours in front of bright screens in the evening almost cannot fall asleep early. They stay up late, are sleep-deprived, tired the next morning, and their academic performance suffers. Gradually, their biological clocks are pushed back by hours compared to the natural rhythm, and the consequences extend into adulthood. This isn't just theory. Lab experiments have shown that just 1 hour of exposure to strong light in the evening is enough to slow the brain's clock by tens of minutes. When repeated daily, this delay accumulates into a significant desynchronization. So what's the solution? The answer lies in daytime balance. Find every way to expose yourself to natural light. Walk outdoors, work near a window, open the curtains. In the evening, gradually reduce indoor lighting, turn off bright lights, set screens to warm mode, or turn them off completely an hour before bed. These aren't just tips, they are strategies to protect your biological clock. I've learned that this clock doesn't differentiate who you are, what you do for a living, whether you're rich or poor. It only understands light and darkness, activity and rest. When we live in sync, it rewards us with alertness, health, and clarity. When we live out of sync, it punishes us with fatigue, illness, and even a shortened lifespan. To maintain health, we need to synchronize all our daily habits with our biological rhythm. Sleep at the right time, eat within a time window, work and study under appropriate light, exercise regularly, and protect the darkness from the invasion of screens. That's not just a life hack, it's a complete way of life. The stomach and intestines are the first to receive everything we put into our bodies. But few realize that they also have their own clocks. When meals come at the wrong time, not only do humans become disrupted, but also the trillions of microorganisms living within us lose their rhythm. The result is reflux disorders, bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, which are no longer temporary incidents, but become a permanent state. I've encountered patients who took stomach medication for years. Initially, it was just an antacid pill for a late dinner. Then, the next day, they needed more. Gradually, it became a habit of several doses daily. They thought medication was the solution, but in reality, it was a restrictive cycle. The longer they used medication, the more dependent their bodies became, leading to silent side effects like osteoporosis or chronic constipation. I understand that without changing their life rhythm, no medication could truly free them. The gut doesn't just digest food, it's also the base of the immune system. The layer of microorganisms residing there fluctuates hourly. Like a patrolling army, during the day they aid digestion. At night, they help repair and heal. When we eat constantly, day and night, there's no room for rest. The microbiome becomes chaotic, resulting in a weakened gut barrier, leaking toxins, and widespread inflammation. Experiments on mice revealed a frightening truth. When they were allowed to eat at any time, their guts functioned erratically, closely mimicking symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. But when eating time was restricted to an 8 to 10 hour window, the gut gradually restored its rhythm, digestion stabilized, and inflammation decreased. This is no longer just theory. Many people practicing time-restricted eating have, after a few weeks, seen significant reductions in symptoms of reflux, bloating, or diarrhea. I'm particularly concerned about the rapid increase in irritable bowel syndrome among young people. Why are teenagers who have never had to worry about their health struggling so early with abdominal pain, alternating diarrhea and constipation? The hypothesis worth pondering is that a desynchronized lifestyle, late nights, night eating, lack of sleep is the breeding ground for this. A generation grew up bathed in screen light and late-night snacks, and their guts are responding with distress signals. If you've ever experienced a burning sensation in your stomach at midnight or intense churning after a late dinner, you'll understand that the body isn't silent. It sends clear signals. Give us back the rhythm we've lost. And strangely enough, simply by returning to an eating schedule confined to daylight hours, those pains, heartburn, and digestive disorders begin to subside. Not because of medication, but because the clock in the gut has been reset. Some people tell me they fear the feeling of skipping an early dinner, as if they'll be hungry all night. But when they try it, after a few weeks, their bodies automatically stop demanding food late at night. The gut begins to shut down the kitchen in the evening, ready to enter repair mode. The next morning, they wake up with a light stomach, a stark contrast to the heaviness after late-night meals. This isn't magic. It's the operation of a biological rhythm that has evolved over millions of years. Our ancestors didn't eat at midnight. They ate when the sun was present. Their guts and microbiota adapted to that rhythm. Now, when we break it, we pay the price. Many people are willing to spend millions on medication, try complex diets, but don't believe that simply changing their timing is enough to heal. Perhaps because in this society, we dismiss what is simple, yet sometimes, simplicity itself is the truth. Metabolism is how our body takes energy from food, distributes it, and uses it. It sounds simple, but in reality, it's a complex orchestra. Sugars, fats, hormones, blood pressure, heart rate all must play in harmony. When one musician plays off-key, the entire symphony becomes chaotic. Medicine names this chaos metabolic syndrome. To be diagnosed, only 3 out of 5 signs are needed: abdominal obesity, visceral fat, high blood pressure, elevated triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, and high fasting blood sugar. Many mistakenly believe these are separate diseases, but in fact, they are interconnected like 5 sides of a cube, and the common thread for all of them is circadian desynchronization. I've met people who believe obesity is simply about eating too much. But the data my colleagues and I collected shows that eating at the wrong times, irregular sleep, artificial light at night, and lack of daytime activity all combine to create a spiral of illness. Adipose tissue isn't just an energy storage site, it's also an inflammation factory, especially belly fat. When you accumulate fat around your waist, fat cells release a cascade of inflammatory signals, raising blood pressure, damaging blood vessel walls, and reducing insulin sensitivity. I recall a young patient, just 30 years old, who was diagnosed with prediabetes. He worked night shifts, ate late, had disrupted sleep, and his belly protruded despite not being excessively overweight. Tests showed he met 3 out of 5 criteria, enough to be labeled with metabolic syndrome. What haunted me wasn't just the numbers, but the truth that if he didn't change, his lifespan would be shortened by decades. But the paradox lies here. This syndrome can be reversed. When my patients began eating within an 8-10 hour window, walking every morning, and sleeping on schedule within just a few months, their belly fat decreased, blood pressure stabilized, and blood sugar lowered. Medications only help control symptoms, but it is the biological rhythm itself that is the key to freeing the body from this siege. Health organizations have warned that cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity are leading global killers. But if we look from a circadian perspective, we see a different picture. They are not invisible enemies, but direct consequences of living against our evolutionary clock. It's noteworthy that intervention studies have shown that even when the disease has already started, its progression can be reversed. In one trial, pre-diabetic individuals practiced time-restricted eating within a 10-hour daytime window. After just 12 weeks, they reduced their belly fat, and their blood pressure and blood sugar significantly improved. No medication in such a short time yields such comprehensive results. If we consider the body as a city, then eating on time, regular exercise, and proper sleep are the traffic laws. When the laws are broken, congestion, accidents, and pollution occur. But when the laws are followed, the city runs smoothly, without the need for external enforcement measures. What troubles me is that modern society encourages the very behaviors that disrupt circadian rhythms. Restaurants open through the night, shift work, screens brightly lit 24 hours a day. It's no wonder that chronic diseases are affecting younger and younger people. But I believe that if each person starts with small changes, eating dinner earlier, walking in the morning sun, maintaining a fixed sleep schedule, the spiral of illness can be halted. The body doesn't just have one general clock, the immune system also has its own. Every white blood cell, every gland producing antibodies works in shifts. At certain times, they patrol more vigorously, producing more defensive substances. At other times, they retreat for the body to rest. When this clock is disrupted, the entire immune system falls into chaos. Inflammation becomes a constant state, protective barriers weaken, and bacteria and viruses easily invade. You can clearly see this after sleepless nights. The next morning, you easily feel thirsty, have a sore throat, and are prone to catching colds. Just one night is enough to weaken the defenses. If this condition is prolonged, the risk is not just the flu, but also autoimmune disorders, where the body turns against itself. Studies have revealed an important detail. Administering vaccines in the morning yields a stronger effect compared to the afternoon. The morning immune system is more ready to receive signals and remember the enemy. And if there's sleep deprivation before vaccination, significantly fewer antibodies are produced. This means that even medical advancements still depend on the human biological rhythm. Treating illness is similar. Medicine calls it chronotherapy, treatment according to time. A drug that might cause fatigue and toxicity if taken at one time can be tolerated many times better if taken at another. Cancer, high blood pressure, depression all show different response patterns depending on the timing of medication. If we understand the rhythm, we can increase treatment effectiveness and reduce side effects. This isn't just theory. I've witnessed cancer patients tolerate chemotherapy much better when treatment is adjusted according to their biological clock. High blood pressure cases, which were previously difficult to control, also stabilized when medication was administered at the right time. The biological clock is not just an hour hand reminding us to eat and sleep, but also a compass for modern medicine. Another aspect is inflammation, the root of many chronic diseases. When we eat within a restricted time window, not allowing the body to eat all day, systemic inflammation decreases. The gut barrier becomes stronger, preventing toxins from leaking into the blood, and even the blood-brain barrier, which protects the brain from toxins, is strengthened. The body enters a state of autophagy, cleaning up damaged cells and eliminating molecular waste. As a result, not only is the immune system stronger, but the risk of cancer also decreases. Night shift workers are living proof of the devastation when the immune rhythm is inverted. They have higher rates of infection, more autoimmune diseases, and a significantly higher risk of certain cancers, such as breast and prostate cancer. This is not coincidental, but a direct consequence of the biological clock being distorted every day. The paradox is that while we constantly search for new drugs to fight cancer and inflammation, part of the solution lies in the oldest thing: living in circadian, sleeping, light exposure, movement. All are free remedies that the body needs to synchronize its immune system. Looking at the complete picture, I see an undeniable truth. We don't just live on medicine, we also live on time. And if we don't know how to live in sync, every pill loses some of its power. The brain is the most time-sensitive organ. Each region of the brain has its own clock, controlling memory, emotions, and learning ability. When the circadian rhythm is disrupted, everything falls into disarray. Memory declines, moods are erratic, concentration collapses. Brain diseases, from depression and anxiety to bipolar disorder and memory loss, all bear, to some extent, the imprint of a broken clock. This mechanism isn't a distant mystery. When the rhythm is disturbed, the production of new nerve cells decreases. Brain connections are haphazardly patched, damage isn't repaired in time, and neurotransmitters become imbalanced. The consequence is that the brain becomes a dilapidated house. Cracks grow larger, wires short-circuit, and lights gradually go out. I remember reading about lithium, a drug used to treat bipolar disorder. Few people know that lithium binds to a component of the biological clock itself, meaning that when patients improve, it's not just due to its effect on mood, but also because the clock in the brain is reset. This opens up a different perspective. Many mental disorders are, in essence, stories of distorted time. In my work with depressed individuals, I often begin not with medication, but with disciplining their life rhythm, sleeping on time, eating within a 10-hour daytime window, exercising outdoors every morning, and getting natural light exposure. After a few weeks, many have seen their spirits bright. That's not a trick or a temporary therapy, it's a recalibration of the brain's rhythm. If one wants to imagine an ideal day according to the biological clock, we can start in the morning. As soon as you wake up, let sunlight hit your eyes, signaling to your body that a new day has begun. Breakfast isn't a hurried coffee, but a meal rich in protein and fiber to sustain energy without spiking blood sugar. Lunch should be light, enough to continue working but not make you sluggish. The afternoon is when muscles are most ready for activity, from brisk walking to running to heavy training. Dinner needs to be early, light, and finished at least 3 to 4 hours before sleep. Once accustomed, the body will naturally close the kitchen at night. If anyone tries to eat late, they will experience what I call food hangover, the next morning heaviness, fatigue, similar to a non-alcoholic hangover. That's a direct reminder that the internal clock does not accept crude interference. Evenings should be dedicated to tranquility, indoor lights gradually dimming, screens turned off early. Darkness is not an enemy but an ally, helping the brain secrete melatonin to guide us into deep sleep. This sleep is not just rest, but a time for the brain to clear waste, consolidate memories, and heal damage. As the day flows with this rhythm, the body and mind enter a new freedom. No longer controlled by caffeine or sleeping pills, no longer chasing complex diets, simply living within its inherent rhythm. The body restores its strength, the brain regains its clarity, and the spirit finds peace. Respecting the biological clock is not a constraint but a liberation. When we live in natural rhythm, we are no longer slaves to fatigue and illness. We are given back the deepest freedom. Freedom to be healthy, to be clear-minded, to live a life not shortened by our own carelessness. Looking back at everything I've recounted, from sleepless nights that disrupt memory to late meals that wreak havoc on the liver and gut, from office neon lights that numb the spirit to the early signs of obesity, diabetes, depression, cancer, all point to a truth that seems almost too obvious. This body was not designed to live chaotically. It was built upon an ancient rhythm. And when we deviate from that rhythm, the price is our health, our intelligence, and our future. The lesson from this book isn't a to-do list, it's a mirror. The biological clock is never silent, it still ticks within every cell, every heartbeat. The only question is whether we are still listening to it. I once thought happiness lay in freedom to eat whenever, work through the night, live without a schedule. But reality showed me that true freedom only exists when we know how to respect limits. Freedom isn't about an endless late-night meal, but about waking up the next morning with a light body. Freedom isn't about dazzling lights until 2 a.m., but about deep sleep that restores us to primal alertness. Freedom isn't about fighting against time, but about living fully within its rhythm. So what about you? Do you dare to look squarely at your biological clock? Do you dare to try limiting your eating to 10 hours during the day, walking in the morning sun, turning off screens an hour before bed? Do you dare to regard sleep as the foundation of intelligence, rather than superfluous time to be cut short? Do you dare to consider darkness an ally, rather than an enemy to be driven away? I know these questions aren't easy to answer. Society around us doesn't encourage these choices. Restaurants are open all night, phones buzz constantly, jobs demand extra hours. Culture praises those who pull all-nighters to achieve success. But remember, the price of that effort could be shortened years, fading memory, and illness knocking earlier than you imagine. I don't want to turn what you've just read into a list of cold rules. I merely hope you'll ask one question. If I live in sync, what in my life will become different? Perhaps it will be morning alertness, a leaner body, a clearer mind. Perhaps it will be an evening with family, no longer interrupted by phones. Perhaps it will be a feeling of tranquility upon waking, no longer haunted by fatigue. If you find yourself tired of chasing a life out of sync, then this is an invitation. Try to change. No need for grand revolutions. Start with a small action. Turn off lights earlier, finish your last meal before 8:00 p.m., walk in the morning sun. That's how you give your internal clock a chance to operate in proper rhythm. And if you've tried it, share that story, tell your family, your friends, your community that health isn't found in the newest pill or the most expensive technology, but in how we treat time itself. I believe this journey doesn't end on the pages of a book. It only begins when you dare to live one day in sync. From there, you will write the rest of your story, a life with more enduring health, clearer intelligence, and true freedom. Freedom no longer confined by fatigue and illness.